There is an invisible prison that encages 99% of the world's population, and its walls are built not of steel or stone, but of a single pervasive and utterly human question. What will they think? This question, whispered in the silent moments before every significant decision, is the defining characteristic of a mental operating system we will call the Outer Scorecard. It is the operating system of the crowd, the default programming of the human animal. It is an evolutionary relic, a survival mechanism from a bygone era that has become, in the complex, high-stakes world of modern wealth creation and strategic decision-making, the single most effective engine for generating mediocrity. The ambitious, the intelligent, the driven, they are often the most tightly bound by its constraints. They strive not just for success, but for the appearance of success. They seek not just victory, but validation. They measure their worth not by an internal, unshakable standard, but by the fluctuating, unreliable, and often irrational ticker tape of public opinion. This is the path of perpetual striving, of running faster and faster on a treadmill that is controlled by others. It is a game you are biologically programmed to play, and a game you are mathematically destined to lose. But there is another way. There is a different cognitive architecture, a mental operating system so rare and so powerful that it acts as a form of psychological liberation. It is the operating system of the 1% of the 1%. It is the defining mental trait of individuals like Warren Buffett, whose entire 9-figure and now 10-figure fortune can be seen as the inevitable byproduct of a lifelong, fanatical adherence to this alternative framework. We call it the Inner Scorecard. The Inner Scorecard is a system of self-evaluation based on a set of deeply held, internally consistent, and rigorously examined principles. It is the ability to make a decision, a monumental, career-defining, fortune-making decision, and to know with absolute certainty that it is the correct decision, even if every single person in your world, your peers, your mentors, the media, the so-called experts, screams in unison that you are a fool. It is the source of true conviction, the wellspring of superhuman patience, and the ultimate competitive advantage in a world drowning in noise. This is not a discussion of personality traits or innate talent. This is a deconstruction of an engineered psychological system. We are going to expose the deep, biological wiring that makes the Outer Scorecard so seductive and so dangerous. We will then provide the architectural blueprint for systematically dismantling it and constructing in its place an inner scorecard of your own, a fortress of infallible logic and independent judgment. You will learn the specific mental tools, the cognitive frameworks, and the environmental design principles required to insulate yourself from the madness of crowds and to cultivate the kind of independent thought that is the prerequisite for all extraordinary achievement. This is not about feeling good about yourself. This is about building a mental weapon. It is the deconstruction of the single most important rule for elite-level thinking, the foundational principle upon which all other mental models of success are built. To understand this is to understand the fundamental cognitive split that separates the perpetually ambitious from the titanically successful. Let us begin by dissecting the prison itself. The human brain is a masterpiece of evolutionary engineering, a tool honed over millions of years for a single, overriding purpose: survival. Not thriving, not happiness, not wealth creation. Survival. And for the vast majority of human history, survival was a team sport. To be cast out from the tribe was a death sentence. Our ancestors, roaming the savannas, depended on the collective for safety, for food, for procreation. In this environment, the ability to read social cues, to conform to group norms, and to maintain a positive reputation was not a matter of comfort. It was a matter of life and death. The individual who was acutely sensitive to the opinions of others, the one who could seamlessly integrate, who avoided rocking the boat, who garnered the approval of the tribal elders, was the one whose genes were passed on. The lone wolf, the contrarian, the individual who blithely ignored the consensus of the group, was far more likely to end up as a predator's lunch. This deep, primal need for social acceptance is not a flaw in our design. It is a feature that ensured our species' continued existence. It is encoded in the very structure of our brains, deep within the limbic system, the ancient, emotional core that predates our capacity for rational thought. When we experience social rejection, our brain's anterior cingulate cortex fires up, the very same region that processes physical pain. To our subconscious mind, the disapproval of our peers feels like a physical threat. A critical comment on a presentation can trigger a physiological stress response, a surge of cortisol, an increased heart rate, that is fundamentally indistinguishable from the response to seeing a predator in the wild. This is the biological reality of the outer scorecard. It is not a conscious choice. It is a powerful, deeply ingrained reflex. The desire for likes, for promotions, for praise, for prestigious titles, for the corner office, for the approving nod from a figure of authority, these are not shallow modern vanities. They are the 21st century manifestations of a million-year-old survival instinct. The problem is that the environment for which this instinct was optimized, the small, stable tribal group, no longer exists. We now live in a global, hyper-connected, and rapidly changing world. The tribe is no longer a few dozen people you know intimately. It is the faceless, anonymous, and often hysterical mob of social media. The consensus is no longer a time-tested survival strategy. It is the fleeting, algorithm-driven narrative of the 24-hour news cycle. The very cognitive tool that ensured our ancestors' survival has become a catastrophic liability in the context of long-term investment, strategic business building, and creating a life of genuine substance. The outer scorecard, once a compass pointing toward safety, now points directly toward mediocrity. It manifests in 1,000 different ways, each one a subtle but powerful drain on our potential. It is the entrepreneur who chooses a business model based on what is currently trending and celebrated in the tech press, rather than one built on a deep, unsexy, but durable market need. They are playing for the approval of venture capitalists and journalists, not for the long-term creation of value. They are building a company whose foundations are in the shifting sands of public perception. It is the corporate executive who greenlights a project not because it has the highest potential for long-term return, but because it is a safe bet that will look good on the next quarterly report and will not attract any criticism from superiors or the board. They are optimizing for career preservation, not for shareholder value. They are managing a reputation, not a business. It is the investor who buys a stock, not because they have done the deep, laborious work of understanding the underlying business, but because everyone else is buying it. They see the price going up, they read the glowing analyst reports, they feel the painful psychological pull of fear of missing out, a direct descendant of the fear of being left behind by the tribe on the hunt. They are substituting the judgment of the crowd for their own. This is the essence of a bubble. It is a mass hallucination driven by the collective activation of the outer scorecard on a societal scale. Conversely, it is the investor who sells a wonderful business at a low price, simply because the market is panicking. The news is filled with doom, the price is plummeting, and the social proof is overwhelming. Everyone is selling. I must be a fool to hold on. The pain of social ostracism, of being the one person holding while everyone else is running for the exits, is so intense that it overrides all rational analysis of the business's long-term value. They are succumbing to the primal fear of being abandoned by the tribe. This is the anatomy of a market crash. The cognitive psychologist Solomon Asch demonstrated this phenomenon with chilling clarity in his famous conformity experiments in the 1950s. He would place a single unknowing subject in a room with a group of actors. They were all shown a line and then asked to match it to one of 3 other lines. The task was trivially easy. The actors, however, were instructed to unanimously give the wrong answer. What Asch found was that an astonishing 75% of the subjects would, at least once, discard the unambiguous evidence of their own eyes and conform to the obviously incorrect judgment of the group. They were not visually impaired, they were not unintelligent, they were simply human. The social pressure to conform was so powerful that it literally distorted their perception of reality. Now, imagine this experiment scaled up to the global financial markets. Imagine the lines are not simple drawings, but complex businesses with uncertain futures. Imagine the group of actors is not a handful of people in a room, but the entire global financial media apparatus, with its chorus of esteemed analysts and charismatic television personalities, all shouting the same, unanimous, and often catastrophically wrong answer. The pressure to conform is not just psychological, it is orders of magnitude greater. The Outer Scorecard operating system is not just a handicap, it is a fatal flaw. It dooms its adherents to a life of chasing trends, of buying high and selling low, of making decisions based on noise instead of signal. It ensures that you will always be one step behind, reacting to the world instead of acting upon it with clear-eyed purpose. It is the path of the herd, and the herd is almost always stampeding toward a cliff. To break free from this prison requires more than just willpower. You cannot simply decide to ignore the opinions of others. Your biology is too strong, the wiring too deep. To try and fight this instinct with brute force is like trying to hold your breath indefinitely. Eventually, your primal brain will override your conscious intention. No, you cannot fight it, you must replace it. You must systematically and deliberately construct an alternative system, a new cognitive architecture so robust and so well integrated that it becomes your new default. You must build an inner scorecard. Warren Buffett tells a story that perfectly encapsulates the core philosophy of this alternative operating system. He asks, would you rather be the world's greatest lover, but have everyone think you're the world's worst lover? Or would you rather be the world's worst lover, but have everyone think you're the world's greatest lover? The question is profound because it cuts to the very heart of a person's source of validation. The individual who chooses the first option, to actually be the best, regardless of perception, is operating from an inner scorecard. Their sense of value is derived from the reality of their skills and character. The individual who chooses the second option, to be perceived as the best, regardless of reality, is a slave to the outer scorecard. Their sense of value is a reflection in the eyes of others, fragile and inauthentic. Buffett's answer, and the answer of every truly self-possessed and successful individual, is unequivocally the first. The big question, he says, is whether you're going to be an inner scorecard or an outer scorecard person. I'm an inner scorecard person myself. This is not a quaint aphorism. It is the central processing unit of his entire life. It is the reason he lives in Omaha, far from the distracting noise of Wall Street. It is the reason he spends his days reading and thinking, not in meetings or on television. It is the reason he was able to buy stocks in the depths of the 2008 financial crisis when the entire world was screaming Armageddon. His decisions are not referenced against the opinions of others. They are referenced against an internal, unshakable set of principles and a deep understanding of reality. So, how is this fortress built? It is not a matter of genetics or a mystical gift. It is a matter of architecture. The inner scorecard is an engineered system constructed upon three foundational pillars. Pillar 1 is the definition of unchangeable principles. An inner scorecard is meaningless without a score to keep. You must know, with absolute, non-negotiable clarity, what your fundamental principles are. This is not a list of vague aspirations like be a good person or work hard. This is a personal constitution, a set of bedrock axioms from which all your decisions will be derived. It is the process of deciding, in a period of calm reflection, what you believe about the world and how you will operate within it, so that you do not have to make those decisions in the heat of a crisis, when the pressure of the outer scorecard is at its most intense. For Buffett, these principles are deceptively simple: absolute integrity, a deep commitment to rationality, a focus on the long term, and the foundational rule of never lose money. These are not mere guidelines, they are inviolable laws. When he is presented with a potential investment, he does not first ask what the market thinks of it. He first runs it through this filter of principles. Does it involve people I trust? Integrity. Is it a business I can understand and value? Rationality. Will it be more valuable in 10 or 20 years? Long-term focus. Is there a significant margin of safety to protect against permanent loss? Rule number 1. If the opportunity fails to pass this initial internal test, the opinion of the outside world is completely irrelevant. It is discarded before it is ever considered. The process of building your own constitution is one of the most important intellectual exercises you can undertake. It involves deep introspection and the study of enduring ideas. Read the Stoics, like Marcus Aurelius, who constantly reminded himself to be indifferent to the opinions of others and to focus only on his own actions and judgments. Read Ray Dalio's Principles, where he lays out the meticulously codified rules that govern his life and his company. Study the lives of great thinkers and leaders and identify the core, non-negotiable beliefs that guided their actions. Then, you must write them down, codify them, make them explicit. This act of writing transforms them from vague notions into a concrete framework. It becomes your personal Supreme Court, the final arbiter of your decisions. It is the hard work you do in peacetime that allows you to remain steadfast in war. For an entrepreneur, a core principle might be, we will only build products that we believe provide profound, measurable value to our customers, even if it means slower growth. This principle, held with conviction, allows them to ignore the siren song of growth hacking, fads, or feature requests for things that would dilute the core product. For a professional, a principle might be, I will only work on projects that align with my core competencies and allow me to produce world-class work, even if it means turning down a more prestigious or higher-paying role. This provides a filter to resist the corporate pressure to become a jack of all trades and a master of none. These principles are your anchor in the storm of public opinion. When the winds of fashion change and the crowd shifts its allegiance, your principles remain fixed. They are the source of your stability and your power. Without them, you are a ship without a rudder, at the mercy of every passing current. The second pillar in the construction of the Inner Scorecard is the engineering of an information filtration system. The modern world is a fire hose of information, and most of it is noise. The Outer Scorecard thrives on this noise. It feeds on the constant stream of news, opinions, price ticks, and social media updates. This constant influx of external stimuli is designed to trigger your emotional, reactive, herd-following brain. An Inner Scorecard, by contrast, requires a deliberate and ruthless system for filtering this information down to only the purest signal. It is about creating an information diet that nourishes independent thought rather than one that fosters reactive conformity. Observe Buffett's information consumption habits. He does not have a Bloomberg terminal on his desk spewing real-time stock quotes. He famously says he doesn't read analyst reports or listen to market forecasts. He does not spend his day on Twitter or watching financial news channels. His primary information sources are annual reports, trade journals, and books, sources that provide deep, factual, and slowly digestible information about the reality of businesses, not the ephemeral sentiment of the market. He is not trying to figure out what the crowd will do tomorrow. He is trying to understand what a business will be worth in a decade. This requires a fundamentally different kind of information. To build your own filtration system, you must become a conscious architect of your information environment. This is a practical, tactical process. First, conduct a radical purge. Unfollow every source on social media that provides shallow, emotionally charged opinions rather than deep, factual analysis. Delete the news apps from your phone that are designed to send you a constant stream of anxiety-inducing notifications. Turn off the television that bombards you with the sensationalized pronouncements of so-called experts whose primary job is to keep you watching, not to make you smarter. You are decluttering your mental workspace. Second, you must proactively seek out high-signal, low-noise sources. Subscribe to publications that engage in long-form investigative journalism. Read books, biographies of great thinkers, deep histories of industries, foundational scientific texts. Instead of reading 100 tweets about a company, read its 10K report from cover to cover. This is difficult. It is slow. It is often boring. The outer scorecard craves the dopamine hit of novelty and excitement. The inner scorecard is built on the slow, cumulative acquisition of genuine knowledge. You are rewiring your brain to prefer the nutritious meal of deep understanding over the junk food of fleeting opinion. Third, and most crucially, you must create a time delay between information input and decision output. The outer scorecard operates in real time. It reacts. The inner scorecard requires time for reflection, for the information to be processed through the filter of your principles. When you encounter a new piece of information or a compelling idea, resist the urge to form an immediate opinion or take immediate action. Let it sit. Think about it. See how it connects to what you already know. Charlie Munger, Buffett's partner, calls this the practice of letting it marinate. This deliberate pause is the circuit breaker that disconnects the stimulus of external information from the reflexive, herd-following response. It creates the space for your rational, independent mind to engage. This filtration system is your shield. It protects your mind from the manipulative and distracting noise of the world, allowing you to focus your cognitive resources on what truly matters, understanding reality on your own terms. The third and final pillar is the strategic practice of solitude and deep thinking. Look at Warren Buffett's daily schedule. It is famously, almost comically, empty. It is not filled with back-to-back meetings, conference calls, or public appearances. It is filled with vast, unstructured blocks of time dedicated to a single activity, sitting in his office and reading and thinking. This is not an indulgence of an old man. It has been his modus operandi for his entire career. He is not being unproductive. He is engaging in the most productive activity possible. He is decoupling his mind from the world. Solitude in this context is not about loneliness. It is a strategic tool for cultivating independent thought. It is impossible to hear your own voice when you are constantly surrounded by the voices of others. The constant interaction, the meetings, the emails, the social chatter, these are all inputs from the outer scorecard. They subtly and not so subtly shape your thinking, pulling you toward the group consensus. By deliberately creating periods of solitude, you starve the outer scorecard of its fuel. In the silence, the signal from your inner scorecard, your principles, your own analysis, can become clear. The neuroscience supports this. When our brains are not actively engaged with external stimuli, a network of brain regions known as the default mode network becomes active. This network is associated with introspection, memory consolidation, and creative insight. It is in these moments of boredom or quiet reflection that our brains make novel connections between disparate ideas. It is the mental state that gives rise to the aha moment. By engineering his day for maximum solitude, Buffett is maximizing his opportunities for genuine insight. He is creating the optimal cognitive conditions for his inner scorecard to do its work. To implement this pillar, you must become ruthless in the defense of your time and your mental space. This means scheduling time in your calendar for deep work or thinking time and treating it as the most important appointment of your day. It means having the courage to say no to meetings that don't have a clear agenda and purpose. It means turning off your phone and email for extended periods to allow for uninterrupted concentration. It means finding a physical space where you can be alone with your thoughts, whether it's an office with the door closed, a library, or a walk in nature. This practice is deeply countercultural. The outer scorecard world celebrates being busy. A full calendar is seen as a sign of importance. Incessant communication is mistaken for productivity. To choose solitude is to reject these shallow metrics. It is to declare that you value the quality of your thoughts over the quantity of your activities. It is the ultimate expression of confidence in your own mind. These three pillars, unchangeable principles, an information filtration system, and the practice of solitude, are not separate concepts. They are a mutually reinforcing system. Your principles guide your information filter. Your filtered information provides the raw material for your deep thinking. Your deep thinking in solitude refines and strengthens your principles. Together, they form the unshakable foundation of the inner scorecard. This is not an easy path. It is a path of discipline, of intellectual rigor, and often of profound loneliness. There will be times when your inner scorecard leads you to a conclusion that is wildly at odds with the prevailing consensus. In those moments, the full weight of the outer scorecard will bear down on you. You will be called a fool, a dinosaur, out of touch. You will feel the primal biological fear of being cast out from the tribe. It is in these moments that the strength of your engineered system is truly tested. And it is in these moments that all the real money and all the real success is made. Let us move from the architectural theory to the brutal reality of its application. An engineered system is only as good as its performance under extreme stress. The true test of the inner scorecard comes not in times of calm, but in moments of market panic and mass hysteria, when the outer scorecard is screaming at its highest volume. There is no better case study in the history of modern finance for this principle than Warren Buffett's actions during the salad oil scandal of 1963, a crucible that forged his reputation and demonstrated the immense power of an unshakable internal compass. To understand the magnitude of this event, we must first paint a picture of the world in which it occurred. The company at the center of the storm was American Express. Today we think of it as a blue-chip, unassailable financial institution. But in 1963, a significant, though not central, part of its business was in field warehousing. A company would lend money to a customer and take possession of their inventory as collateral. American Express, with its sterling reputation for trust and integrity, would act as the custodian of this inventory, storing it in its warehouses and issuing receipts that guaranteed its existence. These receipts were then used by the borrower as collateral for loans from banks all over Wall Street. The entire system was built on the rock-solid foundation of American Express's name. The crisis began with a single obscure company in Bayonne, New Jersey, called the Allied Crude Vegetable Oil Refining Corporation, run by a man named Tino DeAngelis. Allied was one of American Express's largest warehousing clients. It borrowed immense sums of money against its inventory of salad oil, which it stored in massive tanks. These tanks were inspected by American Express employees, and the receipts they issued were considered as good as gold by the banks. In November 1963, a rumor began to circulate that Allied was in financial trouble. The company defaulted on its loans, and its creditors, a consortium of Wall Street's most powerful banks, moved to seize their collateral, the millions of pounds of salad oil supposedly sitting in those New Jersey tanks. When the inspectors opened the tanks, they found them filled almost entirely with seawater. At the top of each tank was a small layer of salad oil, just enough to fool the cursory inspections. DeAngelis had been running a massive fraud. He had created a phantom inventory, borrowing against collateral that didn't exist. The scale of the fraud was staggering. An estimated $175 million in loans, an astronomical sum at the time, was secured by non-existent oil. The news hit Wall Street like a thunderclap. American Express, the guarantor of the inventory, was on the hook. Panic erupted. The outer scorecard went into overdrive. The narrative was simple, powerful, and unanimous. American Express was ruined. How could a company built on trust survive such a catastrophic breach? How could it possibly absorb a loss of that magnitude, which was larger than its entire net worth at the time? The stock, which had been trading at around $60 a share, collapsed. In a matter of weeks, it was cut in half, trading down to $35. The chorus of expert opinion was deafening. Sell, get out. The company is finished. This was the moment of maximum social proof. Every signal from the outside world pointed in the same direction. Your broker was telling you to sell. The headlines in the Wall Street Journal were filled with doom. Your peers were panicking. To hold the stock, let alone to buy it, was to stand in the path of a stampede. It was an act that was, by the standards of the crowd, certifiably insane. This is the moment where the operator of an outer scorecard is rendered powerless. Their system has only one instruction: follow the herd. They sell, crystallizing their loss, and feel the relief of rejoining the consensus. But Warren Buffett, then a young, relatively unknown money manager in Omaha, Nebraska, was operating on a different system. His inner scorecard was engaged. His first pillar, his core principles, kicked in. The question was not, what is the market saying? The question was, what is the reality of the situation? He knew that market sentiment was ephemeral, but business reality was durable. He needed to understand the underlying business of American Express, separate from the cloud of fear that now surrounded it. His second pillar, his information filtration system, was deployed. He ignored the screaming headlines and the panicked analyst reports. That was noise. He sought out the signal. He began his own, deep, scrounging investigation. What was the true, enduring value of American Express? He knew that the warehousing division, the source of the scandal, was only a small part of the company. The real jewels were its traveler's checks business and its credit card business. The crucial question was whether the scandal had permanently damaged the trust upon which these core businesses were built. Had the brand been irreparably harmed? The Outer Scorecard provided a quick, easy answer. Yes, of course. The media said so. But Buffett's Inner Scorecard demanded empirical evidence. So he activated his third pillar: solitude and deep thinking, applied through on-the-ground, primary research. He didn't just sit in his office. He went out into the world to gather his own data. He and a young analyst went to restaurants and travel agencies. They talked to merchants. They talked to customers. They were looking for the answer to a single question: are people still using and trusting American Express travelers' checks and credit cards? The evidence they gathered was overwhelming. Customers didn't care about the salad oil scandal. They didn't even connect the warehousing division with the piece of plastic in their wallet or the traveler's checks in their pocket. They saw the American Express brand as a symbol of convenience and security, and their behavior was unchanged. The company's fundamental competitive advantage, its powerful brand, and the trust it commanded in the minds of millions of consumers, was completely intact. Buffett then went to the company's competitors to gauge their perception. He talked to bankers and other financial professionals. He asked them, now that American Express was wounded, if they were seeing an opportunity to launch a competing traveler's check. They all laughed. The scale and global acceptance of the American Express system was so dominant that competing with it was seen as a fool's errand, even now. He had discovered the reality. The core business was a fortress, an economic moat that was completely untouched by the fire raging in one small, distant part of the kingdom. Now he had to assess the damage. What was the actual financial liability? He did the math. He realized that while the potential losses were large, they were not fatal. The company had the earning power to survive the blow. He calculated that the intrinsic value of the core, enduring businesses of American Express was far, far higher than the $35 a share the panicked market was offering. The market, in its hysteria, was pricing the company as if its entire enterprise was worthless. Buffett, guided by his own deep research and rational analysis, saw that he was being offered the chance to buy a crown jewel business for the price of scrap metal. His inner scorecard gave him a clear, unambiguous signal: buy. And so he did. He invested 40% of his partnership's capital, a massive, career-defining bet, into the stock of American Express. It was an act of supreme intellectual independence. While the rest of the world was consumed by the terrifying but ultimately temporary problem of the salad oil, Buffett was focused on the enduring, powerful, and deeply undervalued reality of the core business. In the following years, as the scandal faded from memory and the powerful earning power of the traveler's check and credit card businesses continued to compound, the stock price recovered and then soared. The bet paid off handsomely, generating enormous returns for his partners and solidifying his reputation as a brilliant investor. But the story is not about a great stock pick. It is a story about a superior cognitive process. Any investor could have accessed the same public information. Anyone could have gone to a restaurant and observed that people were still using their American Express cards. But very few could have filtered out the deafening noise of the Outer Scorecard. Very few could have resisted the immense social pressure to conform to the consensus of fear. Buffett's success was not the result of a higher IQ or a secret piece of information. It was the result of a meticulously constructed and rigorously practiced mental operating system, an inner scorecard, that allowed him to see reality more clearly than everyone else, especially when it mattered most. This case is a masterclass. It demonstrates the three pillars in perfect harmony. His principles, focus on business reality, not market sentiment, guided his inquiry. His information filter, ignore the news, gather primary data, provided him with unique insights. His deep, independent thinking allowed him to synthesize that data into a rational conclusion that was completely at odds with the crowd. This is the power you are seeking to build. It is the ability to stand alone in the midst of a storm, anchored by the certainty of your own work and your own judgment. A second, equally powerful example of the inner scorecard in action is Buffett's investment in the Washington Post in the early 1970s. This case is different from the salad oil scandal. It was not a crisis of fraud, but a crisis of perception. It was a battle against a deeply entrenched and pessimistic narrative held by the entire investment community. In 1973, the Washington Post company went public. At the time, the market was in a deep funk. The Nifty 50 bubble had just burst, and a general malaise hung over Wall Street. Newspapers, in particular, were seen as a dying industry, a relic of a bygone era. The Outer Scorecard narrative was clear. Newspapers were low-growth, high-cost businesses with powerful unions and an uncertain future in the face of a new and powerful medium, television. The Washington Post company, despite its prestigious name, was not immune to this sentiment. Furthermore, it was deeply entangled in the Watergate scandal, which its reporters, Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein, were instrumental in uncovering. This made the company a political lightning rod, adding a thick layer of perceived risk and controversy. The stock, after a brief initial pop, began to slide. The consensus of Wall Street was to stay away. It was a controversial, old media company in a bear market. The Outer Scorecard gave it a failing grade. But again, Buffett's internal operating system processed the situation through a different lens. His information filter immediately discarded the general market sentiment and the political noise. He was not interested in what Wall Street thought about newspapers or what the political establishment thought about the Washington Post. He was interested in the fundamental, long-term business reality of this specific company. He began his deep dive. He knew that most newspapers were, in fact, mediocre businesses. But he also knew that in some cities, the dominant newspaper was a special kind of enterprise, a natural monopoly. A city could typically only support one major, high-quality newspaper. This dominance created a powerful economic moat. Local businesses, department stores, car dealerships, grocery stores, had no other effective way to reach the entire city with their advertising. They had to advertise in the dominant paper, and the paper, in turn, could charge very high rates. Buffett saw that the Washington Post was not just a newspaper. It was the dominant, indispensable information and advertising hub for one of the most powerful and affluent cities in the world. Its brand was not just prestigious, it was an institution. He analyzed the numbers. He saw a company with high profit margins, low capital requirements, and immense pricing power. It was a cash-generating machine. He then looked at the management, specifically Katharine Graham, the company's leader. He saw in her a person of immense integrity and courage, someone who was dedicated to the long-term quality of the product, not the short-term fluctuations of the stock price. She was an inner scorecard leader. The market, in its short-sighted focus on the gloomy industry narrative and the political turmoil, was completely missing the beautiful economic reality of the business. The Outer Scorecard saw a troubled newspaper. The Inner Scorecard saw a media fortress. The company's total market capitalization had fallen to around $80 million. Buffett, through his analysis, calculated that the company's assets, if sold off individually, were worth at least $400 million, and likely much more. The business was trading at a 25% discount to a conservative appraisal of its liquidation value. And this didn't even account for the immense future earning power of its dominant franchise. The gap between price and value was not just a gap, it was a chasm. His Inner Scorecard gave him the same signal as it had with American Express buy. He began to accumulate shares, quietly at first, and then more aggressively. He invested over $10 million, becoming the company's largest outside shareholder. He took a seat on the board. The decision was met with skepticism. Why was this savvy investor from Omaha buying into a politically controversial, old-world newspaper company? The Outer Scorecard couldn't make sense of it. But Buffett wasn't playing their game, he was playing his own. He held that investment for decades. The Washington Post Company, under the leadership of the Graham family and with Buffett's guidance on the board, grew into a massive and diversified media empire. His initial $10 million investment grew to be worth over $1 billion. It became one of the cornerstones of Berkshire Hathaway's wealth. Once again, the story's lesson is not about the stock. It is about the thinking that preceded the purchase. Buffett's success was predicated on his ability to completely ignore a powerful and pervasive consensus. He trusted his own analysis of the business's reality over the market's perception of its prospects. He saw a durable competitive advantage where others saw decline. He saw immense value where others saw risk. He was operating from a place of deep, internally generated conviction. He was living by his Inner Scorecard. These two stories, American Express and the Washington Post, are the parables of the Inner Scorecard investor. They provide the blueprint. In both cases, a powerful negative and unanimous narrative dominated the Outer Scorecard world. In both cases, Buffett systematically ignored that narrative and conducted his own deep, independent investigation into the underlying reality. In both cases, his conclusions were diametrically opposed to the consensus. And in both cases, his adherence to his internal judgment generated extraordinary, life-altering wealth. This is the prize. The ability to think for yourself, especially when it is most difficult to do so, is the most valuable and most profitable skill in the world. Now, the crucial step is to translate these grand historical lessons into a practical, daily operating system. It is one thing to admire Buffett's fortitude from a distance. It is another entirely to build that same fortitude within yourself. This requires moving from passive understanding to active implementation. We will now construct the blueprint for installing the Inner Scorecard as your default mental software. This is not a set of motivational tips. It is a series of rigorous, actionable protocols. The first protocol is the daily scorecard audit. At the end of each day, you must engage in a brief, honest self-interrogation. The goal is to identify which scorecard governed your actions. You must ask yourself a series of diagnostic questions and answer them with brutal honesty. Question 1. What was my most significant decision today, and what was the primary driver of that decision? Was the decision to pursue a specific project made because you deeply believe it will create the most long-term value, or because it is the project that will get you the most positive attention from your superiors? Was the decision to express a certain opinion in a meeting made because it was your authentic, well-reasoned conclusion, or because it was the safest opinion that aligned with the group consensus? Be specific. Identify the moment and the motive. Question 2. When did I feel the pull of the Outer Scorecard today? Think about the moments when you checked your social media for likes, or when you felt a pang of anxiety after a critical comment, or when you found yourself modifying your behavior to please someone else. The goal is not to judge yourself for these moments. They are deeply human, but to become a dispassionate observer of your own psychological machinery. By simply noticing the pull, you begin to weaken its power. You are moving it from the subconscious to the conscious. Question 3. Did I consume more noise or more signal today? Review your information diet for the day. How much of your time was spent on reactive, short-form, opinion-based content versus deep, factual, long-form content? Did you learn something new about the fundamental reality of your industry or field, or did you simply absorb the ephemeral sentiment of the day? This audit, performed consistently, acts like a cognitive personal trainer. It builds the muscle of self-awareness. At first, you may find that the vast majority of your actions are governed by the outer scorecard. This is normal. The key is not to be discouraged but to use this data as a baseline. Your goal is to see a gradual, deliberate shift in the answers over time. The second protocol is the environmental design mandate. As we've established, willpower is a finite resource. It is foolish to rely on it to constantly fight the battle against the outer scorecard. A far more effective strategy is to engineer your environment, both physical and digital, so that it naturally promotes inner scorecard thinking. Start with your digital space. Go through your phone and ruthlessly delete any app that is designed to deliver variable rewards based on social validation. This means social media platforms that are not directly essential for your work. Unsubscribe from email newsletters that provide sensationalized market commentary or gossip. Curate your feeds to be tools for learning, not platforms for performance. Follow academics, primary sources, and deep thinkers. Mute or unfollow those who trade in outrage and shallow opinion. You are turning your digital environment from a dopamine-fueled casino into a library. Next, design your physical space. Your primary workspace should be optimized for deep, uninterrupted thought. This means a policy of no notifications. Close your email client and communication apps for long, scheduled blocks of time. The expectation of constant availability is the enemy of deep thought. Communicate to your colleagues that you will be unavailable for certain periods to focus on high-value work. This may be met with resistance at first, but people will come to respect your discipline and the quality of the work you produce during these focus sessions. Most importantly, you must architect your social environment. The psychologist Jim Rohn famously said, "You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with." If you are surrounded by people who are obsessed with status, gossip, and the opinions of others, their outer scorecard mentality will inevitably infect you. You must actively seek out and cultivate relationships with other independent thinkers. Find people who challenge your assumptions, who value substance over style, and who are secure enough in themselves to operate from their own internal principles. Join mastermind groups, seek out mentors, and build a small, trusted circle of advisors whose judgment you respect because it is based on reason and integrity, not on conformity. This circle becomes your new tribe, a tribe that values and reinforces inner scorecard thinking. The third protocol is the implementation of the pre-mortem technique for high-stakes decisions. This is a powerful mental model, popularized by the psychologist Gary Klein, designed to stress-test a decision by imagining its failure in advance. When you are facing a significant decision, a major investment, a career change, a strategic business pivot, you can adapt this technique to specifically inoculate yourself against the pressures of the outer scorecard. The process is as follows. Before you finalize the decision, gather your team or your trusted advisors. Announce to them, "Imagine we are 1 year in the future. We have made this decision, and it has failed catastrophically. It has been a complete disaster." Then, have everyone in the room spend 10 minutes independently writing down all the reasons why it failed. When you analyze the results of this exercise, pay special attention to the reasons that are related to external perception. For example, did it fail because the market turned against us and we were forced to abandon the strategy due to negative press? Or because a key competitor launched a flashy new product and we lost our nerve, even though our underlying metrics were still strong? Or because our investors got impatient with the lack of short-term results and we caved to their pressure? These are all failures driven by the outer scorecard. By identifying these potential failure modes in advance, you can do 2 things. First, you can develop a specific plan to mitigate them. How will we communicate with our investors to manage their expectations for the long term? What is our public relations strategy if we face initial negative press? Second, and more importantly, it forces you to confront the psychological pressure you will face before you are actually under it. It is a dress rehearsal for the inevitable moment when the crowd turns against you. It strengthens your resolve and allows you to commit to the decision with a clear-eyed understanding of the social and emotional challenges ahead. This technique transforms you from a potential victim of circumstance into a prepared strategist. These three protocols, the daily audit, environmental design, and the pre-mortem, are not a one-time fix. They are a continuous practice, a form of mental hygiene. They are the daily unglamorous work required to build and maintain the fortress of an inner scorecard. It is a lifelong commitment to the principle of intellectual sovereignty. The journey we have taken is a profound one. We began by identifying the invisible prison of the outer scorecard, the evolutionary programming that chains us to the judgment of the crowd. We deconstructed its biological roots and its modern, insidious manifestations, revealing it as the primary engine of mediocrity in a world that rewards independent thought above all else. We then laid out the architectural blueprint for the alternative, the inner scorecard, the cognitive operating system of the world's most successful individuals. We explored its three foundational pillars: the forging of unchangeable principles to act as your internal compass, the engineering of a ruthless information filter to separate signal from noise, and the strategic practice of solitude to cultivate genuine, unpolluted insight. We witnessed this system in action under conditions of extreme stress through the masterclass case studies of American Express and the Washington Post, where Warren Buffett demonstrated, time and again, that the greatest fortunes are not made by predicting the future, but by understanding the present more clearly than anyone else, free from the distortions of mass hysteria. Finally, we translated this grand strategy into a set of actionable daily protocols, a practical blueprint for you to begin the process of rewiring your own mind. The choice, now, is yours. You can continue to live within the comfortable, crowded but ultimately limiting confines of the outer scorecard. You can continue to measure your life by the likes, the promotions, the titles, and the fleeting approval of others. It is the easier path. It is the path your biology has prepared you for. Or, you can choose the harder path. The path of intellectual discipline, the path of self-reliance, the path of building something internal, something real, something that cannot be taken from you by a negative headline or a shift in public opinion. You can choose to be the person who would rather be the world's greatest lover and be known as the worst. You can choose to build and live by your own inner scorecard. This is the great liberation. It is the foundation not only of wealth, but of a life of substance, of integrity, and of deep, unshakable self-worth. Cultivating this inner scorecard gives you the unshakable conviction to make decisions based on your own rigorous standards. But conviction alone isn't enough. The world will constantly present you with thousands of opportunities, thousands of distractions designed to pull you back into the outer scorecard's game of frantic activity. The final piece of the puzzle, the operational discipline that turns your inner scorecard into a wealth creation machine, is a system for focusing that conviction on only the handful of decisions that truly matter. It requires a mental model so demanding that it forces you to say no to 99% of good ideas to save your capital, both mental and financial, for the truly great ones. This system is what Buffett calls the 20-slot punch card. It's the ultimate defense against the activity trap that ensnares almost every ambitious person. To deconstruct that exact cognitive operating system and learn the psychological forcing function Buffett uses to cultivate superhuman patience, click the video on your screen now.